Hey, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, what you help people with.
My name is Anthony. I'm a peak performance coach focused on mental health. My personal journey has involved dealing with bipolar disorder diagnosis and dealing with the medical system for 5 to 7 years and breaking free from reliance on medication, using natural alternative ways and education mainly.
So, how did you get into doing what you do?
That's a long story. The short version of that story is I was always drawn to entrepreneurship for the kind of selfish reasons of time, location, freedom, um, having more autonomy, and working on things that actually I cared for. And it has brought me from an initial career in engineering to then exploring business, getting coached, and realizing that I wanted to be a coach after the experience of having been coached. I had a breakthrough moment where I got really clear on my purpose, and it boiled down to one sentence. I want to help and inspire people. And ever since that day, I've just been going deeper on the coaching journey and getting more specific and specialized in the domains that I deal with.
It sounds amazing. I know you've coached me. I actually had like 4 sessions with you, and then also I ended up purchasing one of your workshops. I think it was on focus, which was super helpful.
Yeah, I remember those times. Yeah, and it's an ongoing journey of keep getting new skills, keep getting new experiences, integrating them into life and moving forward with new skills and reaching the next level, which is what peak performance is all about, really.
So, I know you've done a lot of travel. Do you think that gives you a different perspective than people who stayed more in one place when it comes to networking?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, there's something I mean, I'm so grateful and blessed with my childhood experiences. I'm from France, but I never really lived there. I grew up in different countries, some in Asia, mainly in North Africa, and then spent some time in other, even Western countries. Uh, it adds to a diverse experience of understanding the human condition, understanding culture, and I think the more we understand the breadth of the human experience and of culture, the more we understand people, the better we can relate to them, which is probably one of the core things in networking, to be able to meet people where they're at, to connect with them on a heart to heart, soul to soul, human to human level. And yeah, I definitely say travel is a part of that.
Would you say you're more introverted or more extroverted, and how does that affect the way that you network?
That's a very interesting question. I've fluctuated actually, but I've never been strongly one side or another. I think maybe 10 to 15 years ago, I was a bit more on the introverted side, but I think some of that also stems from external factors like cultural conditioning, my own kind of self-doubt, and this kind of thing. Um, as my personal development journey went on, I started being able to connect with people more easily. And I find that the clearer you are on who you are and what you do and who you connect with and who you don't, the easier it is to network, regardless of whether you are introverted or extroverted. But I will say for people who are a bit more on one or the other extreme, instead of kind of 50-50 like I am, it's definitely worth keeping that aspect of ourselves in mind as a way to recharge in the sense of um, if one is an introvert and is planning on having a networking meeting, then one has to kind of prepare oneself for that and just mentally recharge and make sure that they haven't done so many other extroverted activities during that day because doing too much of one certain kind of activity is kind of going to overload the brain in some senses, or maybe personality. In any case, that's a metaphor, but it's worth experimenting and really trying to find that balance based on the events that we have planned. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm kind of more on that. I'm kind of on the borderline. I swing slightly more introverted, but I'm also very extroverted, so I'm more of an ambivert as well. So I really appreciate your insights. Do you,
And I'm just gonna add something. I think what I've noticed is things are never as black and white as we would like to model them to be. So as much as I can say I'm an ambivert in most situations, it may be dependent on what kind of networking it is. Maybe I'll be more extroverted in person and introverted online, or maybe it just depends on what has been going on in my life these days. So I think just that additional nuance really invites us to be more aware and kind of give ourselves the space and the energy to balance how we feel is best.
do you prefer networking in groups or having more one-to-one conversations?
Yeah, I like group energy for networking, but I like one-to-one for connecting. Um, I think maybe it's a little bias around there are more opportunities for different areas of conversation to pop up in a group situation. Um, and I like that because I think there's such a diversity of people in the world. One of the key principles that has led me to uncovering a lot of insights is exploring the breadth of things that the world has to offer. And so with one-on-one, we're less likely to uncover something new that we've never seen or heard of before. Whereas in a group setting, you have maybe three, four, five, 10 people, then the chances are way higher, I find, to discover something new. And that, yeah, it just triggers my curiosity and sense of wonder about the world. And that's one of my drivers for sure.
Yeah, I had never really thought of it that way before. I always think of like, oh, groups, you're kind of getting to meet a bunch of different people, and then one-to-one, you're going deeper with those specific people. But I never thought of the aspect of groups of like getting those new perspectives and bringing up topics that you wouldn't necessarily think about one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this has been a recent shift for me because I've just discovered online networking groups that were not exclusively entrepreneurs, although it was entrepreneur focused or let's say coach, consultant, therapist, kind of people helping professions, service-based businesses. I've networked with people who are in finance industry, mortgage industry, insurance, and yeah, it's given some very different conversations than the kind of service provider networking that I was exposed to in the past. So that's definitely another aspect.
Yeah, I've been in a wide variety of online networking groups as well. So I'm always looking to broaden the groups that I'm in. So you're always welcome to post or comment anything in my group. That would be interesting in that regard because we're all in there to do networking. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna share a couple of these groups that I've stumbled upon in yeah, in the comment or something, or separately as a post.
would you say getting comfortable being uncomfortable is part of the entrepreneur skill set?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of the key elements. I think entrepreneurship is a personal growth journey that's highly accelerated because compared to an employee role, which might have a subset of skills, the entrepreneur has to kind of wear a lot of hats, and it is uncomfortable. And there's a good reason why, yeah, a lot of businesses don't survive in general. It's just such a strenuous process of ongoing personal growth, ongoing rejection, ongoing discomforts, and eventually you start building muscles where it doesn't matter what happens, you can kind of get through it. And no matter what, there's no judgment. Any entrepreneur who's on this path is on an incredible path, regardless of the outcome. And I highly commend every single one. I think no matter the outcome, the skills gained in the journey are invaluable in life in general.
Absolutely. I learned a lot of personal development stuff just getting into the entrepreneur space because I became aware of it. Because when I joined those marketing groups, those other people selling all of the different emotional regulation and spiritual modalities and all that were in there. So then I met them. And so then I learned about all of those different things that if I wouldn't have become an entrepreneur, I probably would not have come across.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely.
Did you invest money either in networking groups or in coaching on networking?
I've not yet done that, no. I've I used to go to some networking events. I think typically they were free, but they may have had upsells, and depending on the topic, uh, I definitely have invested in business coaching, and as a part of that, there was networking involved, and I've met many fabulous people. But it's only really come into my awareness relatively recently, that there are opportunities to accelerate the rate of networking connections and depth and results and referrals. But I've not personally experienced um, going down that path yet.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people through those coaching programs and things like that as well, even if they're not specifically geared towards networking. I know there's a lot of groups that are like as well collaboration type of groups where you pay like a fee and then hopefully find collaboration partners in there as well. Um,
Yeah, all very interesting opportunities for sure. Um,
Did you make some unaligned connections that you invested more time than you should have invested in them? What did you learn from that?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't want to point any fingers anywhere, but I've certainly invested in programs with big promises where at that point in my journey, I was unaware of how good of a match things could be, in the sense that um, let's say everyone wants to make more money. That's kind of a universal thing. But, and there's a lot of people offering how to make more money, but you'll do better in your own journey if you get coached by someone who is a personality type match, who is a value match, who is more of a niche match to you than if those things are out of alignment. And so, one of the things I've learned through investments that haven't resulted in such good outcomes was this specificity is very important, because I can't really pinpoint the exact reasons, but I definitely know that the closer someone is to the journey that you'd like to be on, and who is also as close as possible in their past to where you are now, is better. I, for example, came from engineering into the world of business. I would do better if I was getting coached by an engineer who also made that jump, rather than from someone who studied psychology or business and then made the jump to entrepreneurship. And maybe some of it has to do with how our brains work. Maybe some of it has to do with our values. Maybe some of it has to do with the journey that we're on. But all these factors really play a part in that.
Yeah, and with that, I think there's good matches, but I don't think there's ever perfect matches.
Yeah, it's all relative based on so many factors. Yeah, it has to feel good. And I think one of the things that I was completely unaware of was the qualification process. In the early days of investing in business coaching, um, all I heard was, do you want to get more clients and make more money? Do you have a heartbeat and a wallet? Yes, you're in. You're eligible. But if someone is actually qualifying you and is saying, "Oh, okay, where are you at? What makes you think that we would work well together? What are your goals? And what have you done in the past that has not worked? Why do you think that is?" Wow, the guy who asks you all those questions, that's the guy to hire. More than do you have a heartbeat and money? Um, yeah, and that's a trap that I fell in and progressively realized was more and more of a trap until now. Now I'm more selective, but it has been through hard-earned investments results.
Yeah, I think about that kind of myself as well. And I think one of the things people don't realize when it comes to making money, there's actually several things that have to be in place before money can be made. So it's not just like fix one thing and then you'll make money. There's like, there's the emotional regulation skills. There's you have an offer and you have an audience of people who, are
Yeah,
interested in that. And, you know how to sell, you know how to position it. So there's like all
yeah,
these different things that go into making money and not just one thing. So you may fix one thing, but that doesn't mean all of the other stuff automatically lines up. So one thing that I've done, especially as I've gone on, is hire somebody to help me with where I see my weakness as, so that I'm like, becoming aware of like the different things rather than saying, oh, like generic make money. Yeah, but is that like the reason that I'm not where I want to be yet? So like, For some
Hmm.
people, it's mindset. And so you might say, okay, get somebody who helps with that specifically. But for other people, like, they may not even have a strategy. So, it's having all of the pieces in place.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it as one big puzzle, and the more pieces are in place, the more it makes sense, and the more likely it will be a success.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on tapping into your intuition when networking?
Great question. This is something that I'm only recently tuning into, um, based on my human design reports, actually. I, yeah, I think having that body-based awareness, of which intuition is a part of it, the same stuff as gut feelings. Um, I think it's a key. It really is a key, but it is also a skill to be developed. Because when we are disconnected from our intuition or disconnected from the awareness of our body signals, then we can't read it correctly, and we might overthink, instead of being guided by that source of intelligence, which I think is a really powerful source of intelligence, because it's largely based on subconscious, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's just it's almost like a summary, um, that just comes in a form of a knowing, like do this, don't do this. You don't need reasons, you don't need to explain. You just go for it. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's important and necessary, but I think it is a skill to be cultivated. And yeah.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I help people with in my program is tapping into that intuition. And the other thing I think is really important to note is it's different from like the nervous system and like feelings, because you know how like sometimes if you're like in a sales situation, somebody hypes it up and you get all excited. That doesn't mean that your intuition is telling you to buy that. So like
Hmm.
I have a whole separate process of checking in with my intuition before purchasing something, which
Yeah.
I go over in depth in my program. I just thought I would add that.
Mm.
So, do you have any closing remarks? Anything you want to add? Feel free to expound upon things.
Uh, yeah. I will say networking is a high leverage tool at your disposal, meaning it's high efficiency for a relatively minimal time and energy. You can connect with a lot of people, but I think there are two remarks that I would say to maximize that efficiency. One has to do with your fundamentals. If you're an entrepreneur, then being clear on who you serve, how you serve them, what kind of values, not just demographics, but psychographics of people you deal with, that helps accelerate things massively. And um, the second one is going into more depth with fewer of the right people rather than a lot of the not necessarily so right or not so deep people. Not people depth, but the depth of your relationship with them. And my apologies for the lighting. I should have done something about that, but I didn't realize the sun would set so early. Yeah, so on the networking, I think these are two key things. The niche basically and offer clarity, and the quality and depth of the people that you connect with.
Thank you so much for your time and for agreeing to be interviewed.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.